anybody who's done anything that's like maybe slightly above or above average, I think you just have to embrace or like loving the suck, because you're like, oh, it sucks so much, but you're like, but that's what moves the needle, and that's what was fun for you that day. And I used to live for that pain. Like I loved that pain.
Alex, what do you think the short list of the most vicious single pitch traditional lines in North America is?
I don't know about vicious, but I think some of the most iconic hard trad lines in North America are maybe Magic Line and Meltdown in Yosemite, maybe The Path in Canada, maybe Stranger Than Fiction for Splitter Sandstone.
That's the one you have to take your shoe off, right, in the middle of the pitch, supposedly.
Well, that's how it's been called. Yeah, in theory. And then,
And try not to rip your toes off.
And then Cobra Crag is probably the most iconic single pitch hard trad line.
Why do you think Cobra Crag has ended up kind of the most well-known, the most iconic?
I mean, I think part of it just has to do with media. I mean, it's beautiful, it's striking, it's hard. It's all the things that it takes for a route to be classic. But also, I think it has a great story around it, and it was documented in the film First Ascent. And so there's a whole story around the attempts on it. And I don't know, it just like became a moment. It was like the cover of Climbing Magazine, and just it's a thing.
Yeah. Do you remember that when it went down? Like the whole mono and the whole, like it just was all sort of ridiculous.
Yeah, the mono and an overhanging crack. You're just like, oh, he's hanging off one finger. That's insane. That's impossible. Like I forget what year that was, but no, that definitely was front and center for me. Where I was like, that's the craziest thing ever. That's impossible. 514 on gear. That's so much.
Yeah. Did it capture your imagination at that time? Did you think it was something you could do?
Yeah, I'm curious. Do you know what year it was? Because
I think it's 2006, but
2006. Yeah, so I probably did it in 2012 or 13 or something. But it's funny because in 2006, whatever year the First Ascent was, it was way outside my scope at the time. So it seemed impossible. And it was like, that's so incredible. I can't believe somebody could do that. For me, it definitely represented the hardest trad climbing in the world, even though it's funny because that still actually comes after Magic Line and, so some of these other hard routes. And it is technically easier than Magic Line. But it's just captured the imagination more, and that probably has more to do with the media surrounding it at the time, because some of the other routes sort of predate climbing media and film, and they just like weren't as big of a moment.
Did you know Sonnie Trotter at that point?
Honestly, I don't remember when I met Sonnie. That's funny. I mean, I must have met him in Squamish.
Yeah, that route for Sonnie was a huge moment, right? That's what put him into the spotlight. At that time, he was already a rising star in the sport, and he was likely Canada's best rock climber, although he would never admit that. I don't know. I also almost feel like that made traditional climbing cool again. We were in like a total bouldering and sport climbing phase, and that route kind of, I don't know. I felt like it made trad climbing cool.
Yeah, I could see that. I think that's kind of fair. I mean, I think in some ways he made trad climbing cool, not just with that route, but with many of the hard trad routes he did afterward. But Sonnie now has a book out, Uplifted, The Evolution of a Climbing Life. And I think it's a classic Sonnie book. It's a total portrait of, or really it's like vignettes of his travels, adventures. But basically there are no grades, no names, no hard routes. It's just lifestyle. It's just kind of cruising around, climbing routes, which is very much in on brand for Sonnie. It's like very much his way. But I think it's exactly that lifestyle that kind of made that kind of hard trad climbing cool again to some extent. It's like, I think Sonnie was a big part of that. I'm Alex Honnold.
I'm Fitzco Hall.
This is Climbing Gold. So let's just get into it. So who are you and what do you do?
My name is Sonnie. I'm a Canadian rock climber for the last 30 years.
And is it fair to say that for part of that time, you were Canada's best rock climber?
Oh, too heavy, man. Too heavy. I was...
It's Climbing Gold. We go straight to the hard questions.
I'd say for a chunk of time, I was maybe one of the most committed and active climbers.
Is it fair to say that you were one of the 10 best climbers in Canada for much of your life?
I don't know.
That's probably true. Yeah, but you're too Canadian to admit it.
There's so many talented people, you know? There's so like it's
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And there's so many dark horses.
you'd have to break it down into like all these little subcategories. Like I'm not an alpine climber and I'm not a boulderer and all sorts of things. Like in a very specific genre, maybe I was the most active, committed climber for a while.
Yeah, it's certainly fair to say that you're a Canadian national hero in rock climbing. Put it that way.
Oh yeah, over the years, with especially with magazine print and stuff. I mean, yeah, people recognize me from time to time. Yeah.
And now you have a book out.
And now I have a book out. Yeah, reflecting on 28 years of climbing time. Yeah, started in 1995. I think the last chapter is basically talking about climbing in 2022 in the Bugaboos, and that's kind of goes from there to there. And I think in my last paragraph, I'm like, I hope I have another 28 years of adventuring ahead of me, but who knows?
I'm pretty sure I started rock climbing in 1995 as well. So I mean, we basically have been on the same path, except that you sort of took it higher and further in a way. You're always so much better, but we have had very similar careers and like paths through professional climbing and everything.
Very similar, yeah.
Kind of similar eras, and I think that's part of what I liked about the book so much is because it made me very nostalgic for my childhood growing up as a climber. You know, it's like coming from the same like gym scene and like the grungy, like the gritty, and just like the lifestyle of climbing at that time.
Yeah, it was very like, it felt very hard to talk about it at that time. Like when I told my like family what I was doing with all my spare time, they're like, you're doing what? Where? Is it a club? Are you on a team? Are you climbing Everest? Like,
Totally.
Yeah, there was like 5 or 6 climbing gyms in Canada when I started. And now there's like 130, 140 gyms across Canada and like 650 in the US or something. And so at that time, yeah, it was really like, I felt like I was part of this like secret club, this grungy underground fight club type of movement, and it,
Yeah, fight club.
I loved it.
Talk about the gym where you started.
Well, it's an old like grain mill and it was like 40-foot ceilings. It was the only one that, only building in tens of miles that you could actually accommodate a rope climbing gym. And then they put this little bouldering wall in the back under this little like under one of these like silo type of barn. And they just like put plywood up on the walls straight to the framing. And it was curved, which was actually really cool because like gradually as you climbed on this bouldering wall, it got a little bit steeper. And that ended up becoming like, we climbed all these routes, but the setting was always really sporadic. And we trained mostly on this like little climbing wall. And there was like always a group of like 6 or 10 of us, just like it is now. But we were all just a bunch of teenagers, trying to get our angst out and putting on like little
Really?
tiny holds and, finding things and drilling holes in them and screwing them to the wall, to the plywood and trying to hold on to them. And we would just do that like 5-6 nights a week and listen to punk rock and, climb our brains out. It was a good time.
Dude, that's literally the exact same thing that I was doing down in suburban California, like the same kind of scrappy gym. I mean, like, can you really set the scene for like, I mean, the gym, you say grain silo, but like how scrappy, because I'm thinking of the gym that I grew up in. It was just like, it's kind of dingy, it's kind of dark, it's kind of like dirty.
Totally.
Especially for people who have started climbing in the last 5 years with modern commercial gyms, they're like so light. They feel like health spas. They're all bougie. Like old gyms, like seriously felt like Fight Club, where you're going like just to the wrong part of town to go into some like grungy building that's like kind of scary to park. You're like, oh, where am I?
Yeah, I wouldn't be super proud if I showed people like, oh, come to my gym. This is where I hang out. This is where I spend like 20 hours a week. And it was like the air quality is not so good. And it was like, like they just rolled paint on top of plywood, right? And the plywood wasn't of high quality. It was like chipped and like you'd get splinters and like it was just so funny. And they sprayed one wall with concrete to try to create like concrete natural rock features. And it was just built from the ground up by a bunch of scrappy carpenters that were climbers. And they're like, let's just do this thing. And there was no regulation or, they just like hung chains from the rafters and like that was your anchor. And but we loved it. We like totally loved it. And it created a home for a whole bunch of us misfits,
And so you worked there through your teen years as well?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I started like doing birthday parties, doing the pizza thing, belaying birthday parties, scrubbing toilets, whatever it took.
Dude, that's literally exact same thing I was doing. Like, exact same. I'm like, oh, I'm playing the birthday party where you're like, raise your feet. You got this. You got it. Come on, raise your feet. You can do it. Raise your feet. Come on, doing great. Keep going. It's like, oh my God. It's like an 8-hour shift of like, raise your feet. You can do it. Come on.
Yeah, I did all that, and then I started route setting quite a lot, and then I was kind of like assistant manager at one point when I was like 19,
I was
19,
like, they made
20.
you the assistant manager?
Well, like
No wonder it was so scrappy.
yeah, they didn't have a lot of options back then. No, it was like me and my girlfriend, and I think actually I was like 20, and I tried it for like 6 months, and we took a business course that was funded by the government of Canada, like a young entrepreneurs incubator program, and we like worked with a bank, and we raised a bunch of money, and we were gonna like build our own climbing gym at 21, and we were looking for like a town that would hold a gym in Greater Toronto area, which is now like 7 million people or something. And we found Mississauga, and it had the biggest population base. That's what we were going for. And then right before we like pulled the trigger on like launching this like business together, I really wanted to go to Smith Rock and climb Just Do It. It was like my dream climb in 2000. And we went there April of 2001. We drove 50 hours from Toronto to Smith Rock.
You drove 50 hours to go rock climbing. Dude.
I'll never forget it because I met so many people that like I met Dylan Johnson like in the parking lot of that trip. And I met Yuji Haruyama and Francois Legrand. They came up to me in the parking lot because I had just done Just Do It. And they came and asked me for beta.
Dude.
They're like, "Are you the key?" Yeah, it was like the highlight of my life to that point. And after I climbed that route, I was like, I can't move back to Mississauga. Like it's just like a giant suburb of Toronto, and I was like, I can't do it. And so we pulled the plug on all of that, and then my life took another turn, and I ended up in Squamish.
And so it's funny, the way you just told that story is really the way you wrote your whole book, which I think is one of the things I found so charming about the book, is that you totally glossed over the fact that you did arguably the hardest sport climb in the country at that time, in easier than two of the most famous professional climbers in the world at that time, like Yuji and Francois, who were in the midst of making that film, the
Professionals.
that one. Yeah, I mean, I remember that film, and it's incredible, and they went and did all the hardest routes, and I mean, they're two of the best climbers of their generation, and like incredible climbers. And I'm sort of like, oh, the point of the story that you just told was just to explain why you didn't wind up opening a gym in Toronto, and you totally glossed over the fact that you did like the hardest climb in the country. And I think that's actually what I enjoyed so much about the book, was that it felt very focused on the lifestyle around climbing and less on performance, like less on the numbers, less on the routes, less on the sends, and more around, which I thought was interesting because, I mean, so we grew up at the same time, basically on the same path of like living on the road, climbing full time. I mean, you were a little ahead of me in some ways, but like basically we had the same experience. And I feel like your book did a good job of capturing that lifestyle. Like there have been a lot of stories sort of like idolizing the Stone Masters and that kind of like 1970s counterculture rock climbing. But that was still going on in sort of early 2000s and like 2010s and stuff. I mean, people living in their cars and just doing the thing. And I was like, oh, reading your book just reminded me of doing the thing through like the 90s and 2000s. It's kind of like the Stone Master version of like the modern era. And I was like, oh, it's so fun. I don't know. Anyway, what do you think about all that? I mean, was that an intentional choice on your part stylistically, or is that just who you are?
That's a great question. I guess it's part of who I am because it kind of emerged that way.
Yeah, you've never thought about it before. You're just like, oh, really? Like that's the way the book is?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that, and a lot of the messages I've been getting from people who've been reading it are like, kind of people who grew up in the same era. Like there's kind of two categories right now. It's only been out for couple of weeks, but there's two categories. One is sort of like the 40 to 55-year-old crowd who they live that life and they remember following my young career and stuff like that, like, oh, I remember when you did that route, and but they also resonate with that lifestyle, and then there's this other group that are like in their like kind of early 20s who are like, I don't know what I want to do with my life, and this was like a really inspiring book.
But they read the book and they're like, I want to do that. Like, that's cool.
Yeah. So that's been really, really cool. I mean, I really cherish that area. Looking back, I think it was a really great time in climbing. I think we've seen so much change from that, like you said, that Stone Master era to this modern era of climbing where, everybody's got like a really nice Sprinter van and V17 is climbed in like a session. This is like bonkers, and we've been around to see that whole transgression, and yeah.
Not that everybody, not just that everyone has a Sprinter van, but everybody has the mobile Starlink unit on their Sprinter van, and they're like working remotely from the parking, like writing code or whatever. And you're kind of like, whoa, this is a really different vibe.
I really liked reflecting on like that time in Squamish. Did you ever hang out by the? No, you were too young.
By the river.
Yeah, because you started in '95. I started in '95.
I'll step in as the senior person. That part of the book brought I was like, yes, this is awesome. And I remembered the signs about like the meth signs that they had, like the whole thing. Like your description of Squamish like just transported me back in time.
Yeah, it was cool to kind of go down that path and try to remember what was it like my very first time driving up that Sea to Sky Highway back when Squamish was like a nothing town, and to see where it's gone and how climbing's changed. It's been cool to reflect on that and put down some of my memories on paper. And I never would have done it had I not had this like, opportunity with Patagonia. But I'm looking back now, I'm really glad that I did, and I'm glad that people are finding joy even in reading about the dark side or the grittiness or the less glamorous side of climbing, the climbing life.
Well, I would actually say that's more of like the textural side in a way. Like you're providing context, you're providing like the richness, like the life around it. And I thought that was what sort of separates the book in a way, is that it's not just a litany of greatest hits, like, and then I achieved this, and then I achieved that. It's more like, this is how I was living, and some climbs happened from time to time while I was living. And the lifestyle is just so, I mean, it's just an era, it's so classic.
Yeah, it was an era, and it was like, I guess it was our era or my era, and I had to include it. Yeah, and one question, just you talking about a little bit about how like achievements versus like lifestyle. And I did a slideshow the other night, and one of the questions was, I remember the era before you, and it felt very like achievement oriented. And now he's like, climbers just seem so much more chill, like a little bit more lifestyle. Like, he brought up like Will Bosey as like this just really relaxed climber who just happens to have the strongest fingers in the world and can do V17s. And then we're like talking about maybe early 90s with like some of the comp climbers, Dale Goddard, maybe Boone Speed, and maybe climbing felt a little bit more competitive in that era. I don't know, like Hans Florine, like a little bit more aggro. And I wonder if it's like because climbing felt so finite, like they were almost like protecting their local crag, but now there's just like so much development happening everywhere, and we realize that the competition is kind of, it just feels like it doesn't exist really. It's almost like
I actually I think that's more cultural mindset shifting, because I think like people like you and people like Chris Sharma and a few other sort of like leaders from the last, like, this last generation of climbing changed that. You know what I mean? Like, because a lot of those guys that were so aggro, they started losing all the competitions to 14-year-old Tommy Caldwell and 13-year-old Chris Sharma, and they're suddenly like, like this aggro approach doesn't really work. And then I think the whole culture just kind of shifted. It's like when Beth Rodden starts winning the open women's category at like age 13 or 14 or whatever, or like Katie Brown wins like, the stuff as a kid, basically. You're kind of like, oh, well, it's like a changing the guard, like literally.
And I think that's just continued to happen ever since, because like now you got this MacArthur, like, who just went and did
Yeah, Hamish
just like V17 in like a
dude,
couple of
17
hours.
a session. Dude, dude, Hamish, who the fuck is Hamish? That was my motto from the Olympics. Every time I saw him, I'd be like, who the fuck is Hamish? But he's like so good. And like now it's just his catchphrase, like, who the fuck is Hamish?
And it's so hard to take yourself so seriously as an athlete when 2 years later there's just another crusher who can come and just run laps on your project. And that's amazing. Climbing is evolving so quickly right now, and we're seeing so many cool breakthroughs. And hard climbing, not just in one area of the world, but hard climbing everywhere. Like everywhere has V17s now, like every part of the world. From Vegas to Sweden to like Japan, like it's everywhere. It's so cool. And so I think that's one of the reasons why, taking yourself seriously or your whatever, call it quote unquote accomplishments seriously, is like, it's all kind of irrelevant, because
Yeah, it's all a game at a certain point.
and you're really just, you're in a sliver of time. And so when I wrote this book, I think it was wanting to capture more about the sliver of time rather than the whatever it was that I was doing.
We'll be back with more after the break. I don't know if it's worth we could have a whole riff on Never Stop Exploring, because I do honestly joke about never stop exploring all the time. And like with J-Star the other day at the Crag, I was like joking about never stop exploring.
What do you mean?
Well, I just joke that if I ever stop exploring, I'll get fired. Like I love going to new places, doing new things, trying new ways, like, you know, even like small scale exploration within your backyard, you know, even like trying a new trail to the Crag, things like that. Just like I see that all as exploration. And I do think that after 20 years of consistently joking about how I should always be exploring, I think it has made me more of an explorer. You know, it's like you fake it till you make it. It's like I just keep saying, don't stop exploring. And then eventually you're like, you know what? I think I am kind of an explorer.
Yeah. I mean, I know what I love about like that sort of like curiosity, but like what works for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think curiosity is exactly the word. I mean, I think that the idea never stop exploring gives you permission to ask questions about the world, to try new things nonstop, to like always be pushing in interesting ways. I just think that that's the best way to interact with the world. If you want to start your exploration, go to thenorthface.com.
That would be so funny if you like send in your resignation. I'm done exploring. Like,
well, dude, eventually I'll get too tired. I'm gonna post something on social, be like, after 25 good years, I'm tired of exploring. Now I'm just gonna sit on my sofa and watch Netflix.
Somehow I don't see that happening. What's June's favorite breakfast?
June freaking loves frozen waffles. And I guess it powers her up, though she's pretty powerful either way.
Dude, I have all these memories of like, I grew up in Florida for like chunks of it, and it'd be so hot in the house, and just like opening up the freezer and like looking at the frozen waffles and being like, I want that, but I also want this freezer door open.
I mean, when June, half the time she doesn't close the freezer, so she opens the freezer, opens the drawer, pulls the box out, sometimes drops the whole box on the floor, and you're sort of like, oh, we got bared. You know, it looks like a bear just came in and ripped the place apart to get their Kodiak cake.
Oh, parenthood.
That's the June's approach. I love that she's just savage. I mean, June does love the blueberry. I mean, I think combining 100% whole grains with more protein keeps you feeling fuller for longer, which is honestly great for the kids at breakfast time. I think June feels like she's getting a special treat, and it's so fun for her, and yet she actually is pretty full afterward, and it lasts, and she doesn't bonk, and it's kind of perfect. Keep your wild ones going with a protein-packed breakfast that will keep them fueled for big days. Find Kodiak products at your local grocery store. They're the ones with the bear on the box. Or learn more at kodiakcakes.com. This wasn't really planned for this podcast, but I'm curious your take on this, because I've hiked to the Crag twice with Jonathan Segrist in the last week or two. And both times he's kind of mentioned that he thinks that just so far this year, like the beginning of 2025, he thinks it's the most significant year for rock climbing achievement in the last decade or so. He thinks it's like a big deal, you know, with like Brooke being the first woman to climb 15C, and Katie Lamb being the first woman to climb V16, and the Hamish climbing V17 in a session, and climbing 2 V17s in a week or in like 2 weeks or whatever it was.
Right. And then El Cap just getting...
Oh, yeah, getting flashing day and like all this type of stuff. I mean, it's like, it just feels like a big change. And so I'm curious, like, what do you think about that? Yeah, do you think 2025 is like a year for rock climbing?
Hell yeah, definitely. It's been awesome.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it's so hard keeping up with. You're like, oh, there's another like record-setting achievement that just happened. It's incredible. Yeah. As you're just like listing off that summary, I'm like, oh my gosh, we're only halfway through 2025, and like all this amazing stuff has happened. It's incredible.
Why do you guys think that this is happening right now? Because it doesn't feel like there's technological advances. It's not like cams have all of a sudden gotten a third of the weight, or like what's going on?
Well, part of what I think it is, and what I said to Jonathan, we were talking about this on a hike for a long time, is that it's not an Olympic year. Like people aren't focused on competitions, and you're seeing more of that talent outdoors. So you have people like Hamish, like Brooke, who did well at the Olympics, and now they're just expressing themselves on real rock, basically. And you're like, oh, wow, the standards are really different when someone who's been training indoors just gets let loose.
Yeah, you can't really tell like where they're at when they're gym climbing or when they're competition climbing. Like it's always incredible, and it's amazing to watch. And you know that they're elite athletes, obviously, for getting as far as they have and performing on the world stage. But then when they get onto like the rock medium, where everybody's kind of trying the same stuff, and you realize like how, you know, just their level, the preparation that's taken them to the Olympics, and then they touch rock, and it's like you get a year like 2025. Yeah, it's crazy.
Back to your journey in the book. I mean, you know, you've seen a tremendous amount of growth in the climbing world as well. And I mean, you've been part of it. You know, you've like pushed some trends and like made some things happen and kind of like made certain types of climbing cool. What did you see as the biggest changes over the, say, 20 years that you've basically been a professional climber? Like, if you had to take big picture, like, which direction has climbing gone that you feel like has changed since when you were a kid?
That's a wow, crazy question. Every direction. Like I can't think of a direction that climbing hasn't like in every genre aspect. It's just it's gone to incredible lengths. Like like there's like a 515A trad route in the gunks right now. Like like climbing's in the Olympics and people are doing like I remember reading about Fred Nicole when he climbed like the world's first V13. You know, and it was like this incredible achievement. And now V17 can get climbed in a session.
And V13 feels trivial now compared to, yeah, like V13, you're like, dude, literally like random punk gym kids climb that on the board, like no problem.
Every day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
It is so wild. So, I mean, I would just say like in every, and then of course, I mean, even with your free soloing, like nobody ever thought that that was a thing. And then you broke that barrier. And so like in every aspect of climbing, it's been incredible to watch as like a climbing nerd. Basically, at the end of the day, that's what I am. I'm just like a climbing dork. I love it. And I love seeing all these breakthroughs in everything. How I've seen it change other than like the growth. I mean, there's, like I said, there's 700 gyms across in North America right now. That's unbelievable. And like the money that's being put into some of these gyms, I just went to the new gyms in Salt Lake City and they are like,
Nice.
they're so nice. Like I think people would like move there for those like it'd be like, oh, I could just live here and just climb here and have like this really pleasant lifestyle where I work and I go to the gym and then I go to climbing on the weekends because everything's like 3 hours drive or 2 hours drive or whatever. There's so much rock around places like Salt Lake, Vegas, Colorado. Like there's weekend spots, but now like living in those towns, you don't have to be a diehard rock climber anymore. You could have a really cool lifestyle going to these amazing gyms because they are so much fun. They are really fun right now. Like if I tried to like recruit some of my high school friends to my old climbing gym with like plywood and screws sticking out and all this like these like old like tweaky holds like with like bowling ball style monos and stuff like that.
Yeah, the bear claw grips where each finger goes into a separate hole and you're like, it kind of hurts. Yeah, it doesn't quite fit.
Like
Yeah.
one of every 10 of us would like get the bug and but now it's like everyone kind of gets it. And so if I had to say like what's the biggest change I've seen, it's probably that like everybody gets it now, that climbing is fun and beautiful and it's super cool to be like just in these wild places, like these, incredible places with like just connecting to nature in that way. And so, yeah, back then nobody got it. Very few. Maybe guys like us in this conversation. And then now I feel like everybody gets it. I think maybe that would, if I had to like summarize it, it's like that's the biggest thing. It's like it's so normal now.
I feel like through the book, you're on this journey the whole time of just sending. I mean, kind of the same journey as me. You start in the gym, you get really psyched, you start climbing outside, you realize that climbing outside is awesome, and then you just go all in, climbing outside as much as you can, climbing as hard as you can, traveling, and just like doing the thing on the road. And I think when it's all laid out in a book, it looks like a very clear path. We were like, oh, I was on this journey to do this thing. But as you were living it, did it feel like an obvious journey like that? Like, did you feel like you were like on a personal quest? Or was it just, like how sure were you that you were going to be a professional climber and that like it was happening?
I was never sure. I was never sure at all. Like until, maybe around 29, 30 I was like, oh, I kind of did what I set out to do, which was when I was 20, I could have gone to college or university or something like that or started a, trade or something. And I was just like, I just knew that I'd be miserable. And I made the decision to climb till I was 30, no matter what. Like whether that was self-funded or I got a little bit of gas money from sponsors or I was writing or working in the industry somehow, but I was just dedicated to climbing the routes that I wanted to climb. And I said, I'm dedicating my life for 10 years and I'll figure out the rest later. If I have to go back to university or college when I'm 30 or 29, that's okay. And so I think it was kind of then when I realized that I'd kind of done what I'd set out to do. And then it kind of started snowballing. Like it got a little bit easier every year after that. But it took like 10 years of like, just like suffering basically. And I never saved a penny of money. Like every dollar I made, whether it was from a competition or route setting or some sponsorship money, it just got reinvested into traveling. I literally spent every penny I've ever had until I was like 30 years old. And there was times for sure where I was like, what the hell am I doing? Like I remember, going through a really kind of an emotional breakup with a Canadian girlfriend I had, and living in my truck, and it was like raining, and I was like living in Rifle, and all my climbing partners had left and so I was like looking for a climbing partner. And there was like 3 days where I couldn't find a climbing partner. I was like reading in the back of my truck. I'm like, what kind of a life, like, what am I doing with my, and then the sun came out, climbers came back. I found some partners. I sent like this amazing, I think I'd sent the crew. I was like, I was waiting to do that. But there's been these like highs and lows for sure. And I think when people ask me like, like how did you make this decision? And I was like, I just knew that I'd be miserable if I didn't. It was really simple for me. If I did anything other than pursue climbing for a decade, I would have regretted that. So
Yeah, that's I feel exactly the same way. Where you're kind of like, oh, you never really know that it's a path until afterward, and when you're doing it, it's just day by day. I mean, it's funny you say that it's raining, you just broke up with your girlfriend, you're in the truck, because I have all those experiences in the van. The exact same thing where you're like, as soon as you're taking a rest day and it's raining, you're like, what am I doing with my life? Like, this is so stupid. I should be doing anything else in my life. Like, this is the wrong path. And then as soon as the sun comes back out and you send your project, you're like, this is the best path. I love this life. It's so incredible.
yeah, it's like the highs and lows can be pretty extreme sometimes, but yeah, and it's like, I think I use the word verve in the book, but like the verve that runs through you, like the life force that you feel when you're like, when the weather's good and the friction's high and you send your project and you're with really good people, it's like, maybe it's the runner's high, but it is like a drug. It is so fulfilling. And I was just chasing that for basically for the last 30 years now. I'm 45.
For your whole life, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so you talk about never saving any money and just turning every dollar you make into another experience. And this isn't a financial podcast. This is Climbing Gold, even though it's got gold in the name. We don't actually make any money. But let's talk about your investment strategy. Let's hear about your portfolio in the early 2000s. Like how did you make professional climbing work? You're in your truck, you do a little route setting, you win a competition every once in a while, you buy a plane ticket. Like, I mean, like lay that out a little bit for people who are interested in like the dirtbag lifestyle, but don't totally get what that means.
So 30 years ago, 25 years ago, finances were a little different. But like I was making like $14,000 a year as like a 20-year-old, and then I would just go into debt all winter long until basically I ran out of credit card space. And then I would come home and immediately start working, whether it was like construction job. I mean, the construction jobs paid better than the climbing gym at some point. So I went to that, and we built like, I did a bunch of framing and trimming and things like trimming doors and windows and things like that because it paid a little bit better. And then I would, crash at my parents' house and just save as much money as I could. And I just repeated this like vicious cycle of saving as much as I could, working 6 months, and then traveling for 6 months and climbing and then doing it again. And the first 2-3 months would always be getting out of debt and then and saving a little bit and then getting back into debt. And I think I did that cycle for probably about 5 years, something like that. And then probably the biggest breakthrough I had with climbing was when I discovered what a line of credit was from the bank. And I write about it in the book, how the cashier basically talked me into signing up for a line of credit. And I was like, what the heck? I qualify? Like, how does that possible? They were basically just giving away free money.
This is what predicated the entire financial collapse of like 2008. And like, when you start loaning money to people who were never going to be able to repay it. But, go on.
And yeah, to touch on your disclaimer there, this is not financial advice to anybody, but I basically maxed out that line of credit. I lived on the road. I just climbed for like 14, 15, 16 months. I just used the line of credit to survive. And I would borrow from it to make each monthly payment, which was escalating every month. It was terrible, terrible advice, but it worked for me because I just wanted to climb without doing the cycle, without stopping to work. I just wanted to go on a year where I just could focus on climbing. And by the end of that year, I think I was, pretty much, I had like 3 or 4 sponsors because it it kind of worked.
And so were you able to pay off your line of credit, or are you still do you still owe?
No, I did manage to pay it off. I think I was like 29 or something when I finally paid it off, um, but it worked for me. And like I said, it was scary, but I also had friends in college and university who had spent 10, 20, 30, $40,000 on education, and they didn't like what they were doing. They didn't even like the field they were in, and they weren't working in the field, or they had quit and they had all this student debt. And I was like, that sounds way worse than what I'm doing, which is, taking this line of credit to go and literally fulfill my dreams. And so it didn't really scare me at the time because I was like, I can let my future self worry about all my mistakes. But I did want to touch on one thing. You actually sparked a memory for me about, deciding whether or not I was going to make it as a professional climber. There were so few professional climbers like in the late 90s and early 2000s. And I remember reading Lynn Hill's book, actually. I was like 20 years old when I think her book came out. And I remember reading it. And I remember having a very similar question. I was like, did Lynn decide she wanted to be, the world's best rock climber? Or was it just an evolution? I've never asked her this, since we've become friends, but it's still a question that I remember having as a 20-year-old. And I think I was debating whether or not I should follow a traditional path of going to school and getting a job, or just pursuing this inner drive or feeling that I had to explore. So it is this sort of crossroads I think we all come to in life where we're like, do I do what's sort of safe, or do I take this giant risk? And her book actually had a big impact on me to just take the risk, because she lived such a fulfilling life, whether it was her intention or not. So in some way, I guess I hope my book can touch somebody out there to like live the life that they want to live on their own terms somehow.
I'm sure you're going to wind up creating a few new dirtbags out of that book. Just a couple kids that are like, I don't need to go to college quite yet. Like, let's just see what I have in the tank. Let's just try a few things. But so the name Uplifted, the book is called Uplifted. Where did that come from?
I proposed a few names to Patagonia. They're like, do you have a name for, what you're working on? And I was like, well, here's some ideas. And Uplifted just came to me, honestly, because I feel like my entire journey has been through inspiration. Like when we started climbing, there was just magazines. And I touch on this in the slideshows that I've been doing. It's like, I started climbing before the internet. And so everything that moved me was through imagery, through Jim Thornburg and like all these incredible photos, Beth Wald, and like all these really incredibly striking images of, Lynn Hill on the nose and stuff like that. And so, yeah, through the imagery, I got inner inspiration. Like it's like this connection. Whereas today we get like YouTube and all this other stuff, and there's so many mediums or like so many outlets for climbing media. But I think just being inspired by that community, I went out looking for it, I guess. I was like, it compelled me, it pulled me to Colorado, it pulled me to California, these places. And I didn't know who these athletes were at the time necessarily, but I knew I wanted to be where they were. So when like people see a picture of you, like, Joshua Tree on, some incredible crack, like, whether they know it's you or not, like sometimes the image is so compelling that you just want to feel what that person is feeling.
Yeah, you're like, I want to be that person. I want to do that thing. You're like, that's so cool. Yeah.
I want to do that thing. I want to, yeah, it feels like I wrote about Dan Osmond, like doing, the flag on the Needles, California. Like
yeah, totally. That's so iconic.
He looked so free, and I wanted to feel what it felt like to be, I ended up trying to solo that line. I down climbed off of it, but,
dude, I've wanted to solo that too. I also have never soloed it. I soloed the thing next to it because it seemed a little too extreme. I was like, it's funny that we both have backed off soloing, and we both saw the Dan Osmond poster. We're like, that guy's the man. This is amazing. And then we both have failed to solo that route because it's just like a little too extreme.
Yeah, I was there for a couple of days, and I was like, I got to go do this thing. And it was a really fun trip.
Dude, but it's kind of hard.
It's kind of thin.
It's like that little 11C. You're just like, I don't know if I quite want that. I'd have to like really like practice it, basically, like have a plan.
Yeah, I wasn't prepared to on-site free solo. I definitely downclimbed when it got hard and insecure. But the name basically came from like a lifetime of being inspired, and then later meeting people like Tommy, yourself, like total heroes to me, and in so many ways. And I guess, it's just climbing is just a life of inspiration. And so Uplifted kind of comes from imagery and the community and friends, and it's really just that I feel like it felt all encompassing, and that's the one they chose, and so we went with it.
We'll be back with more after the break.
I feel like the desert just works me. It drains the water out of me like crazy. How do you stay hydrated?
I think the desert destroys you because you're from the Pacific Northwest, so you're like a plump grape just waiting to get shriveled. But I'm already like a tight little raisin living in the desert, so I think I'm a little bit more heat adapted. I mean, you do physiologically heat adapt a little bit, but then also you just have to be super on top of drinking enough fluids and making sure you get electrolytes. And so when I do big missions in the desert, I do often use LMNT.
Do you see like friends that come visit a lot? Do you see them get just worked?
I was recently hanging out at home, and 3 friends who had been adventuring in Red Rock that had actually been traipsing around in full afternoon sun looking for one of their lost phones on a trail. So they spent hours just walking back and forth in the desert in the sun. They showed up at the house, and I gave them each 2 cans of the LMNT sparkling water, and it seriously looked life-giving. They were so worked and so parched, and they just chugged it. They were like, this is so good. It was like the best thing they'd ever had. I think the LMNT sparkling water is especially good when you're very thirsty.
What makes LMNT different from other electrolyte mixes?
LMNT has way more salt than most mixes. There's also no sugar, but it also has the things you'd expect like potassium and magnesium. So it makes your water delicious, and it has everything you need and nothing that you don't. Get a free 8-count sample pack of LMNT's most popular drink mix flavors with any purchase at drinklmnt.com/climbinggold. That's drinklmnt.com/climbinggold. Find your favorite LMNT flavor or share it with a friend.
Hey everyone, Fitz here. Did you know that you can get Climbing Gold ad-free and support the show? That's right. We now have the unroped option. All the same thought, laughter, and inspiration without the ads. We know some of you have been asking for it, and now that we are going year-round, it made sense to offer it. So there's a link in the show notes. Sign up, and then you get Climbing Gold ad-free wherever you get your podcasts. It's super easy. Check it out.
You know, when I was reading the book, I was struck by the kind of casual tone and the emphasis on lifestyle, and it's like so nice. And the fact that it doesn't emphasize achievement in the same way. But then I couldn't help but wonder if part of that's just because you've always been so naturally talented. And I don't want to underplay the effort that you put in and the training that you've done. And, you know, because obviously you do try, but you don't freaking train like any kind of modern like Olympian, or, you know what I mean? Like you're not like psycho training. And you have always had a very mellow demeanor. Like you just have a lot of natural talent. And I'm going to share this little anecdote, which, you know, is slightly embarrassing, but I mean, I've told this to you a bunch of times, but like that day that you and Lydia, your wife, hiked up to Potosi to the Clearlight Cave, where I was climbing with somebody, and you guys were on a rest day, and you brought like a picnic to come check out this wall. And then you like watched us for a while, and you hung out, and you chilled, and then you were like, you know what, maybe I'll try a thing. And then you tried this 14A, and then you did it second go on your rest day, like totally cash, and you completely botched the whole sequence. Like I just remember, because I was so struck by it, because it's a route that, you know, it's a 45-degree overhang. It's got all these little holds, and it has a bunch of big moves between decent holds and like where you pause on little intermediates and then like jump to the next good hold. And you just held all the holds. Like instead of bumping off things, you're dangling there, moving your feet around, being like, what am I supposed to do next? And anyway, so you sent the thing second go. And I was like, God damn, you know, because I'd been projecting all that. I don't know if I'd been projecting that specific route, but actually it might have been, because maybe that's why you tried it. Maybe it's because we were trying it and we had beta for you. Anyway, I was kind of like, man, if I could send my 514 project second go on my rest day picnic with my girlfriend, I'd be pretty chill about climbing too. You know, I'm kind of like, it's easy to be casual when it all comes pretty easily. And so when I was reading your book, I was kind of struck by the like, yeah, well, it's easy to think it's all fun and games when it is kind of fun and games for you. Talk about that a little bit.
Oh man, well, yeah, it is a little bit embarrassing, but I do appreciate the sentiment behind it. I don't know if I've ever considered myself a talented climber. Like some of the climbers I grew up training with in the gym when we were just teenagers, like there was for sure 2, 3, or 4 of them who were very strong climbers, like boulderers. And I was like,
but that's the thing, is there's always somebody better than you. But the thing is like, but you're the person who's just naturally better than almost everybody else, you know?
But I think where it seems like maybe I have natural talent is because I just climbed 5-6 days a week for, at that point, I'd been, what was that? That was 15 years ago or something like that. Like I'd been climbing for, 15 years and I never really took a break. I think I've just mixed the work and the fun together so much that, put in a tremendous amount of volume and hard work. It just never really seemed like that. And maybe to some degree there is a little bit of talent, maybe whether it's in the movement or the fact that I don't feel like I get too stressed on climbs. Like I feel like I'm able to I feel like when I'm climbing I try to feel relaxed. I don't know where that comes from, but so there's things that I've picked up along the way, but I just also like life is work and climbing is work, training is work, and I've just enjoyed the work. Like when someone loves their work, it just doesn't seem like they're working that hard at it.
I think you were kind of well known for being on the cover of magazines, like looking cool with your ball cap backward, looking all relaxed, like dangling on holds. And I mean, is that kind of what you mean? Is that, it is hard. You are physically straining. It's hard work. You're training. And yet you're also having a great time. It's a beautiful day. You're in the sun. And, in a way, it's all kind of relaxed. I mean, I don't know. I mean, is that kind of what you're getting at? That like that contrast between like, this is really hard, but I'm still pretty relaxed doing it and having a good time and enjoying myself.
I mean, personally, that's been my experience. Yeah, I mean, climbing is so much fun, even when you're trying hard and maybe you're pushing it a little bit at that time, but
And even on the scary stuff, because I mean, you're kind of known for the scary trad and like, green pointing or whatever you want to eco, like kind of like,
yeah, but like, in retrospect, like I think I had a pretty good gauge on when I was actually in real serious danger and when I felt like I had controlled most of the variables. Like a lot of the risk that I took in my career were very calculated. It wasn't just like, well, it wasn't always just like on a whim. There most of the time I put some serious thought into it. I was very thoughtful about the risk I was taking and whether or not where like anything, like you learn how to mitigate it. You learn how to work with it and be like, well, where can I back off from? Where's the point of no return? How long am I in that zone for? I mean, geez, I feel like you know that better or as good as anybody out there, like where that thing is and where those lines are. And so I think looking back, like I was fairly relaxed on a lot of those routes because I'd kind of already done the equation in my head a few times because I am a nerd and I was like looking at the gear. I was like, yeah, that's a 9 out of 10 cam placement. It might be small, but I think I was pretty calculated with my risk taking. And the risk that I don't like taking are things that I can't control, like
loose rock.
loose rock, snow and ice, and sharp rock, like getting your rope like on the Prophet. Like there's a section where Leo like totally like core shot his rope on like pitch 11 like 1,000 feet over and it's just like this sharp edge that if you take a whip on it's hard to protect. And so for that route I ordered an 11 mil rope or something. It was like because I didn't want to take any chances.
Nothing says sending your project like ordering the 11 mil. You're like, good thing I've been training really hard for this ascent.
And they're like, you're the first like professional climber to ever order this rope. It was like I think it was like a 10-8 or something. And I was like, well, if it increases my chances of surviving, so I did all those things. I played all those little micro games where I was like, what can I do to increase my chances of success? And I also, I gravitated towards risk that I could control the outcome of.
Are you still interested in that game?
Oh, I mean, I am, but it like I think like with you, I remember talking with you about soloing. You're like when you would solo even easy routes, even when you weren't working towards something, you were even doing easier routes just to stay in the rhythm. Well, I feel like a lot of that, like there was an era where I did a whole bunch of it because I was in the rhythm, and of course I'm still attracted when I see amazing climbs, climbed all around the world in that style. I'm like, oh, I want to go try that. I want to go feel what that climber's feeling being run out on this beautiful arete somewhere. But I just don't have the time. My life is so structured differently at this moment with kids that are no longer just packable. I can't just bring them like I did.
Yeah, you can't put them at the base of the route and try your project.
Exactly. And towards the end of the book, like I kind of wrote about our trip where we scamp life and we just moved into this trailer and it was such a fun year, but it's happening so fast now. Like my life is like jujitsu and gymnastics and swimming. But yeah, both our kids are very active right now. Our daughter's almost 8 and our son's 11. And I'm like just in a different era where I can't just go on a trip for a week and just get into the zone where I can climb like my hardest route with 2 pieces of gear. Like it's It's just, it's more of like a rhythm. So yeah, I'm still attracted to it. It's just harder to, it's harder to find the rhythm. And so this whole like 9A challenge that we did has been really good for me because actually I've refocused a little bit more on fitness and trying to I guess recalibrate my body to maintaining a high level of fitness. And hopefully as our kids get a little bit older again and a little bit easier, I can revisit some of that style of climbing, and you know, I'll have the strength and the foundation to continue.
You can get onto like sort of dangerous trad again, or like sporty trad again with a high level of fitness and like feel good about it.
I would love to, 100%. But right now I'm just focused on kind of some harder sport climbs that are, because I want I want to push my physical while I still have that window of opportunity. So
You know, this is another random question for you that I had come up at the crag climbing with Jonathan Segrist the other day at up at 5G, this local sport crag. I've been trying this project, which is like maybe 14C, but like maybe 14D. It's hard to say. I mean, it's probably 14C, but it's like, but it's a 40-meter overhanging vertical wall. It's like hard. And if you put all the boulders and things into like Darth Grader, you kind of come out at like 9A or like 9A plus, even depending how you grade it. But then it's just, but I think it's probably 14C. But it's like, it's hard though. I think it's one of the hardest things I've ever tried. And it's like mega, you get so pumped. Anyway, I've been going up there for a month, or like, 8 climbing days or whatever, like spread over a month or something. And I had my first day where I actually had like good sensations on the route and like kind of fought through stuff. And I got so pumped and my arms were like hurting. And I was kind of like, this is what it feels like to be an elite cyclist or something, where like training hurts, like your muscles are burning and yet they keep performing and it's just burning. And you're like, but it hurts, but I'm still doing it. And you're like, oh God. Because normally with climbing, it's hard to get to that. It's like hard to have enough fitness to keep doing that. Like when it gets hard, you fall off, and then, but it was like a rare time where I was like, this hurts my arms so much, but I'm still going. But it made me realize, and Jonathan Segrist was belaying me, and I was kind of like, man, this is like what he's been doing day in, day out for like 15 years. Like literally the only type of climbing he does is the type of climbing where your arms hurt as a result. It's like every burn he does, it's like max effort and his arms hurt. And I was like,
oh, dude,
this is horrible. It's like, because I think I get a lot of breaks from that. Like most of my climbing is like soloing easy routes and like, it's just so non-limit all the time that I just rarely hurt in that way. And I rarely have enough fitness to hurt in that way. And I was kind of like, this sucks. Anyway, what do you think about that? Like pain, like hard climbing, it like hurts.
I'm glad I'm glad you brought that up, because going back to the whole talent versus like work ethic, maybe from my foundation, my youth, I lived for that feeling. I lived for it.
That like pain.
Yeah. I would go into the gym. We had a key so we could go in at night, and I would put on like really heavy metal, like rock, and I would just
like Megadeth.
I would just do like, I would pump laps on like the 513C project that I'd bolted or that I'd route set. I loved that feeling of the deep pain of lactic acid, where you just your arms are just like crippling over like a T-Rex, and I just like I lived for it. And I would do that 5 days a week in my late teens and maybe early 20s. And then as I started rock climbing more and exploring more and adventuring more, I moved away from that. But I lived off of that foundation. I believe that I did. And so when people are like, "Oh, you're a very naturally talented climber," I'm like, "Well, I think I just went through a period of torture for 5 years in my late teens that created the foundation that I fed off of for like a decade after that, because I don't tap into that pain nearly even close as much anymore. Like maybe once a year I feel what you're describing. And when I was like 17, 18, 19, I think I felt it 5 days a week. Like I remember very, very vividly, like coming home from that night of training and then waking up in the morning like I got hit by a truck, couldn't get out of bed, was late for school. And I'd be like, there's no way I'm climbing today. I'm fully taking a rest day. And then school would end at like 3:30. I'd walk home. I'd have like a bowl of cereal and be like, oh, actually, I'm starting to feel a little bit better. And then I'd go, oh, I'll just go say hi to some friends. And I'd go down to the gym and I'd warm up. And then like next thing I know, I'm like in the pain cave all over again. And I would do that like 5 nights a week. And I lived for that feeling, man. I loved it. And I think sport climbing again has been, the last almost 2 years now, I've pretty much only sport climbed. And I've been tapping into it more often, but there was like a decade, I think, where it was like once a year. And so I'm glad you brought it up, because I actually do love that feeling. And I know it sucks. It totally sucks. But
Well, that's what I thought was so interesting is like I also hadn't felt that. Like what I felt was the day before yesterday. I was like, man, I haven't felt this in like I don't know how long. Like the sensation of like serious pain, but still being able to do moves. You know, we're like, oh, I'm still fighting. I'm still fighting. It's like I'm holding on, but it hurts so much. And I was kind of like, I know, no, it felt incredible. I was like, this is amazing. And I'd even felt it on the warm ups. I did this new like 13A B ish type thing that was also a 40-meter journey, but I did it like first try. I'd done whatever. Like it's not technically an onside or flash, but it felt like it because I was questing up this thing. And I was like, I just feel so good. And I was like, oh, it's so unusual, you know, and it takes a long time to get there. But then when you're there, you're like, oh my God, it's happening. I can just like fight through things. And it's like, oh, it's so nice.
I keep kind of going back to like what separates, like you're like, oh, you're like a naturally talented climber, and I'm like, I don't ever see myself like that. And so
But nobody sees himself that way. You know, Chris Sharma doesn't think like I'm gifted. You know, Chris Sharma's like, I just love climbing, bro. Climbing's so cool. It just comes, you know, it's so fun. And you're like, yeah, it's fun because you're the strongest person in the world and it's easy for you.
he must see it by now.
No, I don't think Chris sees it. Chris is just like, you know, I just love climbing. It's so great. And you're like, dude, come on.
I mean, I mean, for me, like going back to like anybody who's done anything that's like maybe above, slightly above or above average, I think you just have to embrace or like loving the suck because you're like, oh, it sucks so much, but you're like, but that's what moves the needle and that's what was fun for you that day. And I used to live for that pain. Like I loved that pain. And so, and I think of like Tommy, like when he was up on El Cap trying the Dawn Wall and that famous quote in Real Rock, he's like, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I love this shit. And it's like snowing and like snowing sideways. And so there's people, no matter what their activity is, where if you love the suck, I feel like you are going to be above average if you embrace and love the suck, because that's what moves the needle. That's just my take right now. I'm just kind of having this like mini epiphany, but hearing you talk about that. But it's interesting going back to sport climbing on this at the end of this podcast because you know I'm going to be 47 this fall, and sorry 46 this fall. Tommy's turning 47, and like I see my window also. Like I'm it's so much harder to recover now after a huge day than it was even 3 years ago. Like noticeably different 3 or 4 years ago. Like early 40s compared to like right now, I feel like I need 3 days to recover from a hard training day, whereas I used to use 1 or 2, and now it's like I need 3 days if I have a mega day, and that sucks. That part sucks. I think to some degree, I don't want to sound like a downer, but like turning 40 to like mid to late 40s is like this window of like, it's kind of like if you're gonna do it, because it gets so much harder after 50. I'm assuming, according to my friends and my peers that are 50 and beyond, the recovery gets harder, and so it's just mathematically harder to reach a point of like your potential at 50 than you could have at 40 or 30, and so
Or 20, you know.
yeah, or 20. I mean, if you're 20, you're on the upswing. You've got a decade or two ahead of you. But for anyone listening, it's like there is like, I don't want to sound down, but like there is a sense of urgency, and I feel like a lot of the times we get sucked into thinking that we have time, and then that time just all of a sudden magically disappears, and we're like, oh, how did that time go by so fast? And so if there's something, I don't know, I guess if there's a message I want to wrap up with, I'd be like, if there's something you want to do, like freaking seize the day, do it now, because time is not on our side.
The one last question, it was actually funny because like a couple weeks ago, I was like moving shit around in the shed, and I pulled out this box with like all my old writing, all my like old journalism things. And dude, I'm not totally sure, but I think that the climbing magazine where you're on the cover sending the Cobra, I think that might have been like my first big story or my first feature. The same magazine had my first feature in climbing in it too. And it was just like, I was like, oh yeah, it's so wild. And, compared to a lot of other professional climbers, like you are not in a lot of films. Like that hasn't necessarily been like such a huge part of your professionalism, right? And I'm curious whether the whole Cobra era where, there was like a short film that went on the Banff World Tour, like did that color your sort of media version or your sort of like the sort of shyness, like that you didn't necessarily want to be in front of a camera? Like how did that come to be?
Yeah, no, that's true. Like whenever I hear my own voice on any camera, I'm like totally self-conscious about it. I'm like, oh man, kind of bummed. And I also just don't enjoy I just don't enjoy being on camera. Like I've never enjoyed it. The climbing part is okay. I don't mind the climbing part, but like interviews and things like that. Like I'm still like learning to be more comfortable with it, but photographs were always pretty chill for me, like pretty easy because I didn't have to like say or do anything in any way that, made me feel uncomfortable at all. It was like this is where I want to be. This is and going back to being inspired by imagery. It was first images that I grew up being really connected to. And so when photographers wanted to take pictures of some of the climbs I was doing, it felt pretty natural. And I felt like I was like, okay, well, this is just one way of inspiring other people. So imagery was always felt very natural and comfortable for me. But then, yes, like any kind of film or movie took me a really long time to warm up to. I'm just one of those people who just never really enjoyed seeing or hearing myself at all on camera. I just feel really self-conscious and shy, I guess. It's just, I don't know, it's just the way I am. And I mean, in many ways, Cobra Crack really did help me emerge from being a little bit more media reluctant to being more recognized, I guess, and more vocal. Like people recognize my voice from those movies. But some people are incredible. I mean, I do write about it in the book. Like today, like so much of social media and professional climbing is like these personalities on camera. Like they're so good and entertaining, or they're educational. They have a page where they teach people things, whether it's anchors or how to train properly or whatever it might be. And it's very valuable content. I've just never been comfortable being like a content creator, I guess, type of climber. And so, there's a time and place for it, and I love it, and I'm glad that it's all out there. I've never felt comfortable in that role. So I've been very lucky that I've worked with companies that have seen my value and my contributions in the climbing community through other mediums, whether it was writing or photography or putting up new routes. And that's where my comfort level lies. So yeah, maybe I just need to push myself being uncomfortable more often. Things like this, a podcast.
Thanks, Sonnie, for taking the time to chat with us. Uplifted, The Evolution of a Climbing Life is out now in print and audiobook. We have a link in the show notes. Check it out. People ask if there are ways that they can help the show, and we love it when you ask. And one big thing you can do is write us a review. I know every podcast asks for that, but every podcast needs it in this day and age. So it makes a difference. So if you dig us, please leave a note on Spotify or Apple. It helps. Climbing Gold is created by Duct Tape and Beer. Alex Honnold is our host. Our production team includes the talents of Skylar Perwins, Marco Seiler Gonzalez, and Evan Phillips. Our creative director is me, Fitz Cahal. Today's music is by Eves Blues and Brendan O'Connell. Will Taylor handles our ad sales. Our executive producers are Jonathan Retzik and Ben Endy for RXR Sports, and Lacey Hendricks and Becca Call for Duct Tape and Beer. Thanks for listening.